A lot of times we think that accounting is just balancing a checkbook. But with a business, there are so many more moving parts that go into it than that. And when you're using software to try to make it easier, then there's also more moving parts. You have to learn the software. You actually have to put the time and effort into learning how to use it properly and not just go, oh, my tax person will figure it out later.
Hi, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Tourpreneur Travel Business Podcast. Every week, we are talking to interesting folk who are serving and doing in the tour and activity industry. And we've talked to tour operators, we've talked to travel technology, we've talked to lawyers, we've talked to everybody you can imagine, but rarely do we talk to the money people, and yet they might be the most important people in your life. And today we are talking to the team behind Purple Sapphire Business Solutions. Kirstin Reeder, Amber Call are my guests today. They are on brand, wearing purple, and they are ready to dive into all things bookkeeping, taxes, financial planning, you name it. Kirstin, Amber, welcome to Tourpreneur.
Thank you. We're so happy to be here.
Yes, thank you.
So I'm going to start with Kirstin because we're all in purple right now. Okay, I'm in gray, but you're in purple. What's the vision behind the name? An accounting firm usually is boring, McBoring company, business solutions, but we've got Purple Sapphire. What's going on?
First of all, I love purple. I have purple walls. I have purple clothes. For a while, I had purple hair. Everything I love purple. And I love sapphires. And there is such a thing as a purple sapphire. They're extremely rare. They don't really have anything to do with the travel business, but that's okay. I wanted something a little more vibrant and different out there.
Well, I like that it is rare, and you can say that it is a rare tour operator that is extremely profitable, and that is where we come in. We will make you one of those rare gems of travel businesses.
I do want to point out there, though, is that purple is one of my favorite colors also.
Yes,
but we did not
that.
coordinate. We did not coordinate this. I was just like, I got to represent, So here I am.
I love it. The job interview was, what are your feelings on the color purple? Oh, it's your favorite color? Do you know anything about bookkeeping? No, it's fine. We can teach you.
Exactly.
Kirstin, my other question that I normally ask tour operators is, what life crisis brought you into this strange corner of the industry? And as the owner of Purple Sapphire, I'm kind of curious, maybe it wasn't a crisis, but what led you to focus on tourism businesses, on this kind of weird little world of us?
Right. Our very first client with this company, and that was even before I had a different name for my company, and I was just a solo person. My very first client is in the travel and tourism industry, and they're still with us today. And I started out focusing in other areas. I thought that I was going to focus on farming, for example. But I realized as time went on that I don't want to say no one, but very few bookkeepers and tax preparers are paying really any attention to the tour industry. And they have some unique needs. So as I pondered, I'm looking at my client and seeing the different things that she has going on. And I thought, maybe we should focus on this industry. And they do short little, hour and a half, 2-hour trips. But we've expanded to multi-day tours and like day-long tours and things like that, as well as travel agencies, because they all kind of are in the same space, speak the same language.
Here's a question that actually came from our community. What is it that would draw somebody to a specialist in tours and activities bookkeeping versus just a good person that they know locally? What did you discover are the quirks of our industry?
Yeah, for what we've discovered with our clients is It depends on the type of tour that you or tour company, whatever that you have, as to how you should be keeping your books. If you've got the quick little, hour and a half, 2 hour in and out tours, that's fine to do cash basis accounting where you recognize income and expenses just as they come in. Whereas if you've got a multi-day tour that people are buying 2 years in advance, you'll want to be on accrual basis. Otherwise, you're being taxed on income when
Haven't
you
earned it yet.
haven't even seen the
Mhm.
business happen yet. And a lot of people don't realize that there's really a difference in that. Also, we have found that tour companies, especially those multi-day tours, they want job costing. They want to know, is this particular tour making me money or losing me money? And sometimes bookkeepers don't know how to handle that at all. So those are a couple of the main things. Amber, have you seen anything as well?
I've been in accounting for over over 15 years, but I haven't been in the tour for that long, and it is vastly different. One of the main things is that we can speak the same language. We know what everybody's talking about, and we can spot the little things because we've been in it so long, and we know what ends up costing our clients money versus being able to catch it and make it to where they're not losing money on something.
We know the booking softwares. We know if you're a concessioner within some sort of government entity like the National Park Service or the Forest Service. We know we travel. We know how to do things with them.
Amber, I wanted to ask you what are some of the very classic mistakes you are discovering as you onboard these businesses and open their books and say,
Uh, okay, so one of the biggest ones that I've seen is just that they aren't reconciling the vendor bills, or they're not matching the payments that are coming in to the bills that they have, or they just don't even have the bills in there. And so what are those payments to? And so I have a ton of money sitting in undeposited funds, and it's been there for years. A lot of times we think that accounting is just balancing a checkbook. But with a business, there are so many more moving parts that go into it than that.
it's not easy. I know from my own point of view as a tour operator, also multi-day tour operator, we have millions and millions of dollars flowing through the business. And there's moments where the bank account has $50,000 and moments where it has $2 million. And it's just because of the awkward structure of when payments are due, when guest payments are coming in. Those vendor payments and the guest payments never align perfectly. And so, depending on the day of the week and month that you look at your business, it looks extremely different.
But yeah,
Hmm.
and it can really mess with the cash flow, like the travel and tourism is very seasonal. So there's, like you said, there's high seasons with 2 million sitting in there, and then there's low seasons with just enough for payroll. And a lot of times that can be a stress in and of itself because, like you get a vendor bill, and instead of looking at the terms for that bill, you just pay it right away because there's money right now instead of projecting for the long run.
Kirsten, I want to zoom out and say that we do have a lot of people who just put the bookkeeping onto an internal team member that might be handling general kind of finances and things. And why can't they just go into QuickBooks or Xero and just kind of reconcile as part of their internal day job?
There's a different skill set. Each person is an expert in their own area. I think it all kind of depends on what size business you have. Some people have very, very simple needs, and for them, it just might work. Now, if you're large enough that you have an internal team member, then chances are your tour business is large enough to where you probably could use a bookkeeper. Also, from a safety and security perspective, you never want the same person who might be handling deposits or any sort of access to the bank account to also be handling the books, because it's way too easy for fraud to happen in those cases. We see it all the time. And that's usually what you'll hear about in the news, is some bookkeeper had control over both the money, access to the money, and the books, so they were able to hide it from the owner of the business. And so we're a control for that
Yeah.
type of situation.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So let's talk about basic good bookkeeping hygiene. What does that look like? Like, what are the things that every operator listening to us? We have thousands of different kinds of operators: boat people, multi-day hikes in Argentina, food tours in Japan. What can you speak to in terms of just general good principles that they should be following?
You never want to give anybody who does not own the business power to do something in your business without an approval process. Okay. So we do match deposits with stuff for our clients. And we also do pay bills for our clients, but there is a very strict approval process in place so that our clients know exactly what it is that we're doing for them. And we tell them the time and the date and the amount. And then they give the okay. And then we go in and we process it.
From a bookkeeping perspective, keeping up with receipts is really important. But no one wants to actually do that. No one wants a pile of receipts. They're a pain. So I am a huge proponent of taking a photo. There are apps available, but even if you don't have an app, maybe have a folder on your phone where you stick them all. Also, making sure you have your business bank account. I can't tell you how many times I've seen business owners run everything through a personal bank account. And one, that can kind of cause trouble from a legal perspective, but also it's just super messy bookkeeping wise. So it's always best to have a separate bank account that you're not letting willy-nilly people have access to. I've seen that. And then another thing, especially in the tour industry, is if your business is the type that takes a deposit and then there's a potential for refunds, depending on what your refund policy is, because everybody's a little bit different. Have that set aside, because that money does not actually belong to you yet to spend. So maybe have a separate bank account or have extreme discipline to have that money set off to the side so that if you have to do a refund, you've got it there. And some states actually require a trust account by law where you can actually fund that refund if necessary. So those are some basics. I would also say don't trust the software's recommendation for categorization. QuickBooks is horrible at suggesting a particular category. So don't trust it. don't You don't know how to categorize things, hire somebody, because it will not do it right for you and it'll mess everything up.
What do you recommend other best practices in terms of the early stages of your business for getting set up? Should you start by just getting a QuickBooks or Xero account? And can you start by being a sole prop? Should you begin by opening up that limited liability partnership or organization, whatever it is called in your country? And what are some of the mistakes you see from that point of view of like the earliest stage businesses you were?
I can only speak to the US. If you're just starting out, you're a sole prop and you're deciding on whether or not to do an LLC, that's more of a legal question. And so I can only kind of give generic what I've seen suggestions there, but a lot will depend on your insurance level and what your laws actually cover, because sometimes an LLC is kind of worthless when it comes to protecting your personal assets. It varies from state to state. And from a bookkeeping perspective, you totally can start out as a sole prop or a single member LLC. They're taxed exactly the same. To start out, I would definitely get a a separate bank account. Also, one thing to look out for, sometimes people say, oh, I don't want to pay the fees, so I'll just open up a personal bank account and use it for business. Your bank may have trouble with that. I think it has to do with the number of transactions that runs through and things like that. So I don't know. I'm not a banker. And then it depends on how busy your business is. You might be able to track everything on Excel or even pen and paper if you're a pen and paper person. The trick is just keeping it all together and keeping track of as much as you can, because you don't want to leave any tax deductions on the table, and you want to be able to kind of have an idea of where you stand. Am I even making any money, or am I just bleeding money with my business? Not that we've ever known anybody who does
Mhm.
that. Another good practice is spend your business money on business things. Amber and I've seen it a lot where business owners will use their business account as an ATM essentially. And I'm just going to, I'm going to pay for the vet bill from my business account because I've got money in my business account. And then they wonder, where's all our money? So building good habits when you're first starting your business is super, super important.
Amber, what are some of the money leaks that you see on the day-to-day level with your clients?
Well, the main one that I see most often is, like I mentioned before, is the unreconciled vendor bills. That's like the biggest one, is that it's so easy to miss an overcharge. We started checking weekly for invoices that come in weekly for some of our clients, because some of the vendors had, an extra $20 or $100 that wasn't matching what was in Fair Harbor, wasn't matching what was supposed to be coming through. And so we're like, we got to put a stop to that so that our client is not bleeding cash for something that didn't actually happen. And then the other thing that we've noticed is that, that lumping everything into a general account instead of dividing it. They just are putting it all into just one expense account. And it is so easy to just try to survive the week and the tours that you have that going on at that time. And then I'll pay attention to it later, right? Or I'll catch up at the end of the month, but then you have more tours going on, or you have repairs that have to happen. And then, it compounds. And then there's the stress. And so many things get missed when you're putting it off and putting it off. That's when fraud happens, when you aren't aware of what's going on, when you don't have somebody in there checking it regularly. And I think that it's the tiny little things.
Didn't you find like 20,000 or something with a vendor something one time?
Oh yeah. Yeah. So we got a Safari company, and I was going through reconciling all of their vendor invoices, and they had been overcharged by $20,000. And she was able to go to the vendor and she got a full credit for that. And I'm just like, whew, so glad we caught that.
I'm wondering, especially in the United States, there are so many different state level rules for what state taxes look like. How are you thinking about your kind of role as a tax expert vis-a-vis that legal side, which is like where you're incorporated and like the legalities of where you've decided to establish your business, especially with a lot of multi-day operators that establish their official businesses in the United States, but they're largely operating overseas, and they themselves might actually live overseas.
That's a whole thing. Yes,
Well, let's get into that thing because
right.
we have a lot of
Because
those customers.
we've had clients where their basis of operations is in the United States, and then they will actually go to Italy or Africa or something like that, Hungary, and lead a tour over there. We had one client one time where she was a citizen of another country. Her company was based out of the US because it was a hassle to actually form a company in her country. So she had a C corp in the US, and then she lived in the country where she did her tours. So there were all sorts of pieces going on there. As an enrolled agent, I'm licensed to do taxes in all states and in US territories. We have several clients in St. Thomas as well. So I'm familiar with the different income tax rules. So we're very used to multi-state. Sometimes you'll have a tour company that's based out of, or I'm going to make something up, based out of Georgia is where they're located and their operations are, but they may do tours in Lake Tahoe or New York City, and they work all over. They might actually have tax requirements in all those states where they're working. So we know how to split everything out that way and segment everything so that people are paying tax to the proper jurisdiction.
When we are tracking everything with the right location, it is so much easier to make sure that the taxes owed in whatever state is owed is correct because we were tracking it for that location, for that particular tour. And so it just makes it so much easier during tax time to where there's no rush to figure out, where did that money come from? We didn't track that exactly. Nobody likes tax time, so let's make it a little bit easier and stress-free on everybody.
Yeah.
I think one of the fundamental questions people ask very quickly is, should they be on cash or accrual? And could you explain what those two differences are and what kinds of businesses should be thinking about both of those categories?
So cash basis is where you're recording income and you're recording expenses when the cash actually hits your bank, when the payment is made or received. And it has to be constructive too, to get precise. So sometimes people will say, well, I got the check, but I'm going to hold on to it until a couple days later. And that's when I'll deposit it. And that's not, it's when you actually have control of
Yeah.
the money. That's cash basis. Accrual basis is where you record the income or the expense when the service is performed or when you've actually received the benefit of the expense. So, for example, you've got a multi-day tour that someone has given you a deposit for 2 years in advance. Accrual basis would mean that money would be put um, in like a deposit category, which is a liability. It's not money that you can spend yet. And it will actually become income when the tour happens 2 years down the road. Or if you prepay for a deposit or something like that to a vendor, that's a prepaid expense and it's not an actual expense that I can deduct until the tour happens. We've found that for quick little day trips, quick in and out, they typically aren't booked months and years in advance. Those are good candidates for cash basis, partly because they're a lot easier to refund. I mean, let's face it, those things get, refunded a lot. And when you're doing accrual basis and you have to do refunds, it can be kind of a pain.
One of the things when it comes to expenses and thinking about, keeping it all clear is that the business owner is rarely the one actually making the expense. It's the guides, it's the people
Yes.
on the front lines. And I was a guide for many, many years, and I was awful at keeping all of that stuff straight and submitting things on time.
And like I said, that's not your skill set.
Yeah.
You weren't hired as a guide to be the bookkeeper. You were hired to tell an amazing story. So, yes, I see this. Yes.
Yep.
So how do we solve that? Amber, are there any ways that you've discovered to make guides a little better at paperwork and all of that stuff?
So a really good example is this. We have a kayak outfitter activity and he tells me all the time, my guides are river people. They don't do paperwork. And I said, I get you. I understand. So we've kind of come up with a solution for that. And it's where if there's all of his guides, if they buy anything out of pocket or anything like that, all they do is just take a snapshot of it, send it to a group Slack is what they have. And it all just goes there, and then they can just forget about it. They're done. They did their part, and everybody's got their phone on them, and so they're able to do it just right away. And that way everybody can get reimbursed like they're supposed to. Nobody's unhappy or feeling like, they're putting money out of pocket for their boss and their boss keeps forgetting about them, stuff like that. So it's actually made it really easy. His guides are no longer upset with him because he's like, well, you put the receipt where? And they're like, I lost the receipt. And like, well, I can't reimburse you without a receipt. So it just really worked out really well for him in particular. Other companies that we have a portal that everybody can kind of have access to, and they too can just snap a picture of it, or like Kirstin was saying, they have a folder on their phone, and then it's like a shared folder, and everybody can just pull the receipts. Well, we can pull the receipts out of it to match everything at that time. Another way that we've seen is that you just make it to where managers are the ones that are buying things and not the guides themselves. That way, it's just one person that needs to keep track of everything, and so that's worked out well before too.
When you've got employees that are spending money on behalf of the company, there needs to be some checks and balances in there. And so there are different apps and companies that can help make that easier. And when it comes to multi-day tours, like, you've got someone in Italy and there's a guide that they have several days worth of receipts that they're needing to keep up with, the restaurants that they're going to, the hotels that the whole group has stayed at. They might have cash that they've been given to cover, tips for taxis or something like that. Something as simple as just an envelope where they're writing down, the cash that they've spent and then reconciling at the end. They're throwing all the receipts that they've gotten in that envelope and then kind of reconciling at the end. The company should have some sort of process, an SOP of sorts, to keep track of all of that. And it doesn't have to be anything elaborate, just as long as the guide can remember.
Are there, I guess, levels of receipt worthiness? I mean, I know
Yeah.
some accountants are like, if it's on a credit card, that's fine. If it's small under a certain amount, it's fine. Like, it seems like a little bit of a gray area.
Right, right. In the US, especially when it comes to meals, anything over $75 has to have a receipt, and they have to have some sort of business purpose to them. So I often tell people, like, write down on the receipt, who it was, what you were doing, things like that. When it comes to other things, if you can tell what it is, then you could probably win in an audit. And this is what it all boils down to is, I don't want to say audit proof your books, but could you succeed in an audit? That's the way I kind of look
Mhm.
at everything. Could I defend this in an audit? And um, if it's something obvious, like a $26 charge from Chevron, that looks
We
like
get it. Yeah.
gas. Whereas a $26 charge from Amazon, it could be anything. I don't know that there's really a set dollar amount, but I'd say around the $75 mark, because that's kind of where the meals is.
Hmm.
But other things, it just kind of depends on what it is. Like, for example, if we've got, $100 charge on a credit card to a company that is clearly a canoe manufacturer, we know this is for some sort of equipment or something for our canoe outfitter, and we probably won't say, oh, you need a receipt for that.
Something else that we've seen and have had problems with is when the owner will just make a withdrawal
Mm.
and we don't know what that withdrawal was for. And then when we ask them about it and they're like, "Oh, I don't remember doing that."
I'm an owner of several companies and I'm the worst offender of everything, but I know that I can shove it off to somebody else's plate and they take care of it, and I just have to remember to make that happen. I think there's some people for whom they look at their books, they've been doing them themselves, they're bad. And it's kind of like the dentist phenomenon where you're like, my teeth are so crusty, I just want to completely avoid what the dentist is going to say. When you come in, are you doing basically a big deep cleaning and looking at things and being helpful to those fearful people?
We are. It's so funny. I was just thinking about this the other day. I've got an organizer that I want to work with, but I'm scared to let her in my house because I'm so embarrassed. But that's the same thing that other people are doing. They're like, "Ooh, I don't want you to see the state of my books. This is so embarrassing." And I get that all the time. This is so embarrassing. And really, it's just money. It's just money. And I'm not an organizer, and so I shouldn't expect my house to look like an organizer lives there. I don't expect neat and pristine books from someone who tells a story for a living because I can't tell a story to save my life. Everybody has their own skill set and everybody has their own area that they're an expert in. And so I don't expect pristine books from someone who doesn't know because it's not just about categorizing, balancing a checkbook. There's people go to school for this.
Mhm.
And it's not something that just anybody can do. And we do our very, very best to not make anybody feel bad because there's nothing inherently wrong with it. We're there to just help people make sense of their own money, save them money, help with their businesses. We're there to partner alongside them and just kind of prop them up. I guarantee you, anything that someone comes to us with, we've seen worse. We've seen worse. There's always somebody worse.
Yeah. It's like when you don't want to get naked in front of the doctor. They're like, they've seen it all. Just
Oh, yeah,
chill.
Yeah,
exactly, exactly.
exactly.
Yeah.
One of the odd natures of our industry is just how seasonal it is. And one of our previous guests a couple of weeks ago, Joseph, he made a little bit of a mistake where he created his business in January and he looked around and was assessing his competition and saw no competition because all of his competition had turned off their businesses for the season. You couldn't book them in January for a food tour of Budapest.
Ooh.
And then in March, all of his competitors popped out of nowhere and they were suddenly online again. So that was kind of that was a good mistake because it got him in the business. But I see a lot of times when an operator doesn't plan for the down season. And I'm wondering, you're both nodding your heads. Yes, 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 yes,
Mhm,
yes.
mhm.
What can an operator do to prepare for that seasonality and also the fluctuations over like the larger seasons of the years and business fluctuations?
Some of the things that we've kind of witnessed and helped play a part in is that, trying to come up with ways to save money during the high season so that when the low season hits, it's not so hard on the business. And so you have enough cash burn, basically. So, enough saved up to take care of your company for so many months if revenue dips, right? So put aside so much money into a low season account so that you can pull from there when times are a little bit tighter. And that way you can keep your employees. Or another thing that we've seen is to think outside of the box of what you normally offer and what else you could offer during that season. But the biggest thing that I've seen that has helped with, that cash flow seasonality is planning for it. Everybody knows it's going to happen, and everybody dreads it when it does happen. But then those that I've seen it have actually put the effort into knowing what's going on in their books and knowing, where they are at different times of the year, and then going, all right, I need to make sure I have this amount of money set aside for this time because our revenue goes down by 30%. That those are the ones that have smoother sailing. So many times, especially with, sole proprietors, and they are just trying to keep their heads above water. They just look at, the next one, the next one, the next one, instead of 3 months from now when there aren't that many anymore. And so just having an eye forward to the future and planning for that. And a lot of times having somebody that doesn't work in the day to day of what your business does, sees it kind of on the back end like we do, we can kind of say, okay, well, what if we look for a different vendor for this offering that you're doing? And so that we can maybe find a way to save money on that so that you can put money aside, or you just have more money in the account for when low season happens. Just different ways that we can try to help come up with and think outside the box so that that low season is not quite so low.
What's really interesting about that is we're veering into the kind of world of business strategy and financial planning, talking about developing more tours, looking at modeling future years and what that growth looks like. Kirstin, do you get into that?
We do look at advisory and budgets, and we can definitely speak to cash flow management and that overall picture. And that's where we like to come in as a partner versus just, oh, I'm your accountant and I need these receipts type of thing. We really try to partner with you, provide advisory, expense audits are a big thing. Analyzing each tour. Are they profitable? Is this one just continually losing money? Should we even be offering this tour because the particular vendors that are involved are getting too high priced? Something like that. That's where we try to come in and really provide some guidance there.
Do you recommend that the companies are keeping separate accounts for taxes, like a separate bank account where they just dump in money periodically?
It's helpful. It's helpful for sure, because otherwise, come time to pay their estimated payments, and they're like, so where do we get it? Where's that money? We'll
Mm-hmm.
pull it from the deposit account that's
Mm-hmm.
supposed to pay for a refund if we have it. And then we're just robbing Peter to pay Paul. And some people even need an account at a different bank that they can't access. It all depends on kind of your own
Personal
discipline
demons.
level. Yes, exactly. I
Yeah.
mean, I can only help so much with some of these things.
Well, Amber and Kirstin, I feel
Yeah.
like I could just keep peppering you with a million questions over and over and over again. But I feel like at this point, it would be helpful to A, share ways in which they can get in touch with you. B, I want to note that in just a couple of weeks, you're going to be at Tour Week, our conference, and you're going to be there facing hundreds of tour operators who are going to be right there in your face, asking very pointed questions. And
Yeah.
we're really grateful for you to be there, because it takes a
So
lot of guts on
excited.
your side to have our community kind of come up to you and just assault you with very pointed questions.
Yeah. Oh, I'm an extrovert. I love all that type of stuff. I love conferences. I'm so excited. I've never been to Charleston, so I'm super excited to meet you face to face and
Yeah.
to talk with everybody. More than happy. More than happy. I'm super excited about that.
Amber, what's your final piece of advice to all of our business owners out there from all of your dozens and dozens and dozens of experiences with clients? What do you have to say to them to get their asses
Well,
in gear?
So one is don't put it off. Like it's something. We had a client just recently say, every single person at whatever conference, they need you. They just don't know it yet. And that's just it. Is like you think, I'll do it eventually. I'll do it eventually. And so just don't put it off anymore. If you know you need it and it would help ease your stress, like you do it for yourself, if nobody else, right? So that's probably my final advice. But I also wanted to throw it out there that we have a freebie offer that we put together specifically for your listeners here at the Tourpreneur. And I will share the link to that, but it is a expense audit calculator that we have put together. Please just go and download it and use it because it will open your eyes to where you might be leaking expenses and cash. And so we wanted to make sure to have something that is usable right away. And so, yeah, hopefully
Have you ever
that.
been more excited or more terrified to download a freebie?
As
An
my dad
Excel
always
spreadsheet.
says,
Yeah.
knowing is half the battle. Knowing is
Yeah.
half the battle. You
Yeah.
got to take that
Yeah.
first step at one point.
All right. Well, financial doctors, thank you so much for being here. We're excited to do this all again in person in Charleston, but also more importantly, just over time in the Facebook group. You're members of it. You've already been chiming in and introducing yourself. And we're just appreciative that this level of very unique expertise can be a part of making all of our Tourpreneurs businesses better. So Kirstin and Amber, thank you so much for being on Tourpreneur.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you.